Hey Tyrone, good to see you.
Thank you. That's loud, this.
Let's just wait for everybody to put their bits up. Tyrone, first and foremost, huge congratulations. When and how did you hear about this call-up?
I'd just come in from training at Villa and found out that, looking at my phone, as I usually do, got a text with all the information that I needed to report for England duty. Few swear words in there, my reaction. So, amazing moment, one that I'll never forget. And it was probably apt that I could share it in the changing room with my teammates at the time. So, yeah, great feeling.
Who was there with you? Do you remember what they said?
I don't want to give them a shout out. I think I was there with Henry Lansbury, a couple of the foreign lads. Not too sure they knew what was going on, but I then had to go and sit in my car and make a few phone calls and try and take it all in.
And the family's reaction?
Very emotional. Parents, obviously the first people that I called. A really, really proud moment, I think, for them. They were probably a little bit more surprised than I would have liked. But obviously their emotions at the time were probably everything they've put into my journey and helping me to get to this point. They felt that it was a really special moment. So,
you mentioned that journey. I mean, it's a heck of a challenge you've had in your football career, really. I mean, 8 years ago, working part-time as a mortgage advisor and playing non-league football, to get to where you are now. How tough was it back then, and did you ever think this sort of day would happen?
No, not at all. I had other goals at the time. When I was a mortgage advisor and when I was playing non-league football, I had different goals. Playing for England seemed like a different world, where I just needed to get back into the professional game at that point. So I can't say that whilst I was sat on my desk cold calling or trying to help people remortgage, that playing for England was a real achievable goal. But as I've worked with some great coaches and been able to play for some great clubs, everything has kind of culminated together to get me to this point. So at different times I've had to reassess my goals, obviously going through injuries and stuff like that. But it makes it all the more sweeter being sat here right now.
You were rejected, I think, by Southampton as well for being too small as a youth player coming through. Is that right?
It is right, yeah.
How tall are you now?
I'm 6'5".
Does that give you a wry smile?
No, I wasn't big at the time, so I probably wasn't as physically developed as I needed to be to go into an under-18 kind of professional setup. So fully respectful of their decision. There were players probably better equipped to handle the level at that moment in time, and with the budget that they had at the time, I think they weren't doing too well in the first team, and they were probably fully justified in their decision at the time.
I wanted to ask you as well about some tough times you had growing up, where I read that you and the family spent some time in a homeless shelter as well. And I know you've done a lot of charity work, shall we say, with disadvantaged people in society ever since. But do you think that's helped shape the person you are today, never mind the player you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in moments of difficulty, there's always positives you can take from them and lessons that you can learn from any experience that you go through. So everything that I experienced growing up, a lot of people would have gone through different backgrounds and kind of upbringings, but it's definitely given me a ability to empathise with other people, maybe outside of the game, or people that aren't as fortunate as me. So not that I feel it's my duty, but I really enjoy being able to kind of lend a hand and give back to people that are in situations that I was not too far away from at a certain point in my life. So it's I think as footballers we are in the public eye, and we are role models to kids growing up. So I think we have to try and do all we can to help out and give back where we can.
This England squad's done a lot of that. You look at some of the guys that have spoken out on racism. You look at Raheem Sterling and Danny Rose, who've spoken very openly about difficult times in their upbringing. It feels like there's a new openness, doesn't it? And you being a part of this England squad only adds to that.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing for fans and everybody outside, or maybe not in direct contact with players, to be able to see that we are humans and we do have opinions. Sometimes people don't always agree with our opinions, but we do have opinions, and it's about speaking out at the right time, on the right topics, and kind of putting our message across in the right way. So I think everybody has their different opinions on different topics. Like you said, people have spoken about racism, whether it be mental health or any topic that people feel strongly about. I think they should feel comfortable enough to kind of portray their personality.
Let's talk about on the field. Gareth Southgate told us last week when he announced you in the squad that he'd watched you in the Championship and was very impressed, and you'd more than taken that on in the Premier League. And we were looking at the Opta stats, and you're leading the way in terms of blocks, clearances and heading clearers, more than anybody else in this division for this season so far. Do you take a pride when you hear the England manager talking to you about that, and when you see those stats?
I do, yeah. I would have liked a few more clean sheets to be a bit higher on those stats, but obviously that's my job as a defender, to clear the ball, head the ball, block it. So I certainly take pride when I see myself on those lists in the Premier League, because that's ultimately where you want to test yourself. I don't know whether it represents that we've been under quite a lot of pressure. I've had to make that amount of clearances, but Bjorn next to me in the defence has been just as important. So I think we're building something really special down there. It just takes a little bit of time to gel. And I've also felt comfortable enough at Aston Villa to be able to make the transition from Championship to Premier League with all the help that I've had down there.
It would be remiss of me not to ask you briefly about Lansbury's disallowed goal as one of the most controversial refereeing decisions and VAR issues that we've had in the Premier League so far, while we're on the subject of Villa. What's your view on all of that?
Well, I'm not actually that against VAR, so I think it's probably important to point out that in the end, I don't think it was a VAR decision. It was just a poor refereeing decision. And those things happen, unfortunately. I don't hold a grudge against it. We obviously were very disappointed at the time. But throughout the course of the season, sometimes these things even themselves out. So it was a poor decision. Everybody has spotted that. It certainly wasn't a dive. There was certainly enough contact there to make it not a dive. But yeah, it was very unfortunate. The lads were obviously felt very aggrieved after the game. It's just something you have to take on the chin and move on from.
We've talked a lot about this England team being very close-knit. Have you noticed that since you've come in? How have you settled in? How have you been made to feel welcome?
I have, yeah. And I've been in a few different dressing rooms. And I've been the new person in a few different dressing rooms before, and this is just as easy to settle into. They're a really good, welcoming bunch. The average age is quite low, so that probably helps. There's a few different players that I know from playing against or playing with. And, obviously Callum, Tom Heaton, I've played with. So it has been really, really easy to settle in. The manager and the coaching staff have made me feel really welcome and a part of the squad. Even before I got here, with his comments about my performances and why I was called up, it made it very easy for me to settle in, yeah.
How would it feel if you were asked to make your debut against Bulgaria at Wembley on Saturday?
I don't know.
Have you dared to think about it?
No, of course I think about it. I've thought about it ever since I got called up, making my first cap. But again, I've had different challenges to worry about between being called up and worrying about the game. First of all was trying to impress in training and trying to get my boots on and feel comfortable on the training sessions, which I have done, and I've really enjoyed them. So, of course, I think about making my debut, but if and when that day comes, I'll worry about that then.
And finally from me, of course, you're going to be back at Wembley either way, where 3.5 months ago you got some pretty special memories. Will that all come flooding back to you when you walk out onto the pitch?
Probably, yeah. It's definitely up there, one of the best days of my life. And it was a special achievement, one that I've watched that game many a times over the years, the Championship playoff final, and I've always wanted to be a part of it. So the fact that I was able to go there and win was very special for me and for the club. And obviously we were able to reap all the rewards that came with it, playing in the Premier League and being able to sign for Aston Villa full time. So yeah, I'm sure those memories will come flooding back, yeah.
Tyrone, Ian Dennis from the BBC. Have you, indeed you might be going to St Mary's as an England international, but have you thought about the possibility that you could make your debut there, and how or what would you feel as you walk in with the England team, bearing in mind you were turned away as such a young boy?
Yeah, I've thought about it. There's not much I haven't thought about in terms of what could and couldn't happen, but like I said before, I don't hold any grudges over Southampton. I don't hold any grudges over the decisions that they made, because if I'm completely honest, they were probably justified at the time. I wasn't quite big enough and I wasn't quite physically developed enough to maybe cope with the demands of the game. So it would be a fitting story if I made my debut at St Mary's. It maybe would have come full circle, but I don't think it would feel any more or less special doing it at St Mary's than it would anywhere else.
During your time at Millfield School, how did that shape you as an individual?
I couldn't speak highly enough of my time at Millfield, really. It was a really important time of my physical development and perhaps mental development, to step away from the professional game or the academy setup and kind of be able to develop away from perhaps the scrutiny of trying to get into an under-18s team or impress a first-team manager. It was a time of my footballing development where I could wait for my body to mature and maybe develop. And the facilities that they have down there are obviously excellent. So it was a really important time for me to step away and kind of regather my thoughts after being released and kind of decide what I wanted to do when I came away from there. But the footballing that I had down there and kind of the experience that I took from it was a positive one.
And during the challenges you've faced, what's the best bit of advice you've ever been given?
Good question. What's the best bit of advice I'd ever been given? Probably just keeping the end goal as your main goal. There are a lot of difficult and dark times throughout, just talking through my professional career. Times where maybe there wasn't an obvious way or an obvious path to success. But keeping the end goal, which was always it was getting back on the pitch whilst I was injured, or getting back on the pitch when I wasn't playing at Bournemouth, knowing what I wanted and kind of doing everything I could to go and pursue that dream or that goal was probably the most powerful thing that I could take with me on my journey.
And finally from me, Gareth was praising your leadership qualities last week. What for you makes a good leader?
I don't know. Obviously, everybody has different ideas of leadership. Some lead with their voice and some lead with their actions. I think, talking about Aston Villa, Jack's probably a great example of a player that leads with his actions. He's never scared to get on the ball and kind of get a grip of the game. I'm very much a talker and I leave everything on the pitch. So in terms of the organisation of the team is something that I feel comfortable doing. So for me, what makes a great leader is somebody that can organise and take control perhaps when others wouldn't want to.
Hi, Tyrone. Quite often when you speak to footballers that have played in non-league football or not come through academies like yourself, you find they have a more rounded vision of the game. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've not spoke to too many that have come through non-league, but for myself, I can definitely see the game from a fan's point of view. I was a fan for a long period of time, and I can now see it as a player's point of view. So there are a lot of different challenges that you perhaps don't see as a fan in terms of being a player, but coming from non-league and kind of having to adapt to the speed and the intensity of being a footballer every day is one that is perhaps the biggest challenge for a non-league player. But everybody has their own story. Mine is just really special to me.
You're still beaming, so you can tell what it means to you to be called up. Having never been called up at any level before by England, how did you think you might have missed the boat, or did you always believe that you would have this day whereby you get a phone call from the England manager to come and play for your country?
I didn't think I'd missed the boat. No, I just felt like I needed exposure or game time just to kind of get into a rhythm and show what I could do. I've not been in this situation before, so to be finally called up is obviously a very proud moment and a very proud moment for my family. But no, there was never a time I thought I'd missed the boat. That the boat was going though. But no, to be sitting here today is obviously an extremely proud moment for me.
I presume you've been inundated by your family for tickets for Saturday.
No, quite a lot of them can't actually make it.
Really? Where are they?
They got prior arrangements.
They're not cancelling them?
I know, it's incredible, isn't it? No, my family will be there. My family will be there for sure.
And finally, I know you said it already a little bit before on this, but the last time you were at Wembley was, when I spoke to you, was after the playoff final. You become a Premier League footballer. Would it be more special to walk out? Obviously, it would be, with 3 lions on his shirt on Saturday.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm living the dream at the moment. So to walk out in any capacity as an England player at Wembley is something that I've always dreamed of. So, yeah, it'll definitely be a special moment for sure.
Well, Tyrone, I mean, first of all, we know that social media definitely likes to get carried away, but you know you're doing something good when I've seen the Villa faithful online describe you as Villa's Virgil van Dijk. And just hearing your remarkable story, just how does that comparison, make you feel? And has there been any player such as him that, you currently admire, that you tried to shape your game after?
Yeah, him for sure.
Fair.
I think he's perhaps one of the most complete centre-backs in world football right now. So I try to watch as many clips as different centre-backs as possible and take different inspirations from different places and different people. So, yeah, he's definitely one person that I would love to emulate on the pitch.
And how does that comparison make you feel now?
I mean, to be mentioned in the same sentence or breath as him is an extremely positive thing. I wouldn't make those comparisons just yet. I've got a long way to go for that, but it's nice. The Villa fans are brilliant, so those comparisons are fine with me.
Just last question there, Rob, and then we'll move on to the embargo.
Hi, Tyrone.
Hello.
We'll be speaking to Mason Mount shortly. Is it right it's kind of your dad's job nowadays to try and find the next Mason Mount for
I knew he'd get a mention. It is, yeah. He's a scout for Chelsea, and I'm sure he'll be watching this. Pleased that he got a mention. So thanks for that.